Joining me now is Denver Riggleman. Denver Riggleman is a Republican congressman from the 5th District in Virginia. Congressman, great to have you with us.
Good morning, John. How you doing?
Good. Just had an hour with former Governor Terry McAuliffe. I believe he is going to run for president, and there might be a pathway for him if his party decides, maybe we don't want to nominate a socialist like Bernie Sanders, right? We'll have to see. All that.
Well,
that's why you
Joe
follow
Biden,
me. You get
so
all the
maybe,
action.
maybe McAuliffe does have a moderate path, but gosh, I hope not. But yeah, they just took out Biden, so maybe that clears the path for McAuliffe to jump in.
Well, you know what? I didn't bring that up with them because I really didn't want to go there. But I think that's definitely playing into his decision because Biden's done. I mean, he'll get caught up in any of these things like he did. And, there's been rumors of Creepy Joe for years and just the creepy stuff he does. I don't think he's in an environment where this is going to get swept under the rug, Congressman. I think he's done.
I don't either. I mean, and it's interesting, what we have going on in Virginia, which is much worse. But, if you're inappropriately touching or I don't really understand. I don't know what he did was kiss the back of the individual's head. And I guess I'm just not quite sure, what he was thinking. But, again, there's a lot of things going on out there. And even the suggestion of that could be awful. And you're right, the rumors have been out there. But now other people are trying to explain away some of the behavior. So I find it interesting, what's going on right now.
I mean, coming up behind somebody and smelling their hair. I mean, come on, that's just creepy, right? I mean,
yeah,
I do that to my wife, right?
That I know of.
You just go up to somebody and smell their hair. I mean, come on, man. That is just creepy stuff. I mean, look, I do that to my wife because, I love to snuggle with her and stuff like that. But just go up to somebody and smell her hair. I mean, it's just intrusive. It's just gross, intrusive, and creepy. Just creepy. And it is creepy. Gross.
It is.
It's gross. All right,
it's crazy.
Let's get off Creepy Joe. Just the thought of it is it's like cringe city. All right, let's get off of Joe Biden, Congressman. Let's get on to some real things here. And maybe if things don't work out for him, I got a big heart. I'll send them a pint of your best whiskey just to cheer him up a little bit. Because I got a big heart.
Might help him out.
Right. I know, just help him out because I got it. Right, I got a lot of friends all over the place. Never kick somebody when they're down is what I say.
No.
Now look. Denver, Congressman Riggleman, I'm sorry. We got a lot to talk about. Let's start with the Mueller report. Your reaction. Bill Barr says we're going to get a document in a few weeks. It's going to be redacted. The Democrats are going crazy. What say you?
Well, I think people go crazy when they don't get the outcome they expected. And I think all of us have to read it. I'm looking forward to reading it. But again, I think you've heard it this weekend. We were there right when it was released, and here's the statement that I think we can at least go by, is that if we trust our agencies, right, we had the Democrats trusting the FBI. If the FBI in the full report says what Barr said that they said, which he's not going to lie about it, it's ridiculous, that there was no evidence of collusion, not insufficient evidence, we don't think there's evidence, no evidence of collusion. There's really not a whole lot to fall back on. Now, as far as the redacted part, John, you were talking about that. If you look at Barr's letter, when you talk about pen registries, you talk about some of the technical things that they had to do for metadata. That's going to be redacted because those people aren't being used. That is okay. So I think it's people who understand, intelligence work. They understand classified data. They understand how law enforcement and how, I did counterterrorism and counter-drug. You understand that. You don't get wrapped around the axle, but you do trust that the FBI, I think a couple things, they had to do an investigation that was correct, right? Mueller had to, based on the ridiculous behavior of the other FBI agents and the unprofessionalism there. So you're going to get a professional report. And if the Democrats are going to hold the line that they trust our agencies and the FBI was going to do a fair report, which just about every congressman and Democratic senator said, then you got to trust that that's what the outcome is. So the Mueller report, no evidence of collusion. Let's actually move on and legislate. Let's help the American people. Let's do things that we're elected to do and not have emotional issues, going forward, because I'd rather get to work and legislate.
Look, the Democrats say they're going to fire off the subpoena cannon. They're going to continue to investigate the president. They want to see his taxes. They want to investigate his companies. What is your take on this whole thing?
They have a lack of ideas for legislating. They're appealing to some very small section of their base, which is really interesting to me because they have a chance. With what we can do in Congress, if we could reach some bipartisan solutions, we could do some things for the country. But they lack any type of ideas. They've gone so far left. I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the leader of the party. If it's true that she's the one who convinced the Senate, to vote president instead of having any guts at all, about anything. If really the far left or this new left is the face of the party now, I just think the Democrats lack any ideas for legislating. They're putting up bills that are ridiculous, that have a bunch of poison pills in them. So when you lack ideas, you attack. When you're in the majority, you should have stability. They still think they're in the minority and they need to cause chaos. And if you're in the majority causing chaos with a lack of any legislative ideas, you get what you have right now. And I think, John, people who haven't, been in this whole political game for a long time, common sense business people, common sense military people, which are, they're out there, especially in Congress. I think they're tired of it. And it's exhausting just to watch the Democrats spin into an emotional tornado over this instead of trying to legislate.
I think you're right. There's so many things that we could be working on together, lowering prescription drugs, finding a better healthcare way forward, getting immigration reform, getting roads and infrastructure bill. Instead, we're still talking about impeachment, subpoenas, witnesses, taxes. The whole thing is ridiculous. Congressman Denver Riggleman, let's get to the crisis at the border. The president says, look, if we can't get this fixed, I'm just going to shut it down. Even Jay Johnson, the former Secretary of Homeland Security for President Obama, says that it is a horrific situation at the border. 20,000 people apprehended last month alone. I mean, we have historic numbers. They can't handle the influx they have. And the president now blaming Mexico, Honduras, Colombia, saying he's going to cut their aid off. They're not doing enough. And he says, I'm just going to shut the thing down. Is that the right plan right now?
Well, if you agree there's an emergency, that I do agree. And we know because we have the intel on the border. This isn't made up. This isn't something that's being, sort of tried through CNN and MSNBC. There has to come a time when the United States say, listen, if you don't have a strong border, what you're doing is you're encouraging people to make dangerous treks across the border. They're putting their families and their children at risk because we have a weak Congress and we can't seem to get immigration reform done. We can't secure the border. And it's really interesting to me that if you look at it in a common sense way, if you just look at it in a professional way, if we do have these type of apprehensions, we do have these things coming across the border, there is something that people don't realize. It's just like back at 9/11. It's the unintended effects, right, of not doing what's right? Information sharing, making sure that you have defense in depth, making sure you have a wall, physical security, making sure you have increased communications, making sure you have the right personnel. The return on investment for the American people is huge here. If we do what's right on the border, you're talking about saving millions, really billions of taxpayer money, but you're also talking about saving lives. You're doing all of this by having a common sense border strategy for security. So I understand the frustration, and I understand why we have to secure that border, why we have to shut it down until we get really good immigration policy in place. Because I'm telling you this, if we secure the border, we're going to be able to work in a bipartisan fashion to streamline immigration to this country because of our labor issues and the fact that we need that. But let's secure the border, and I see where he's going with this. And after the reports and the intel, if anybody now is denying there's an emergency on the border, John, I think they're actually have just politicized this or they don't care about the United States. And I think that's what you have right now.
Well, not when Jay Johnson goes on TV and says that it is a crisis and it has to be addressed and we can't do business as usual. Let me ask you this, though. The already Wall Street is whining about closing the border. Your friends at Goldman Sachs and, the typical big money Republicans that dole out funding two congressmen who don't do anything, unlike yourself, by the way. And they're already complaining about the billions of dollars that are going to be lost in trade, and it's going to be economic Armageddon, and we're all going to die. How do you respond to that?
It's crap. It's just crap. I mean, come on. I mean, what's happening is you have a lot of people who are using, low-level labor. And so here we go, right? This is, again, the whole thing about this ridiculous conversation back and forth. Either you have those who are trying to politicize the issue on, we don't care about immigrants, which is just blatantly false. Or we have those who are talking about labor issues or economic Armageddon on the other side. So both have these vested interests, these tiny pockets of vested interests. Let's not go that way. Let's actually do what's right for the American people, because if we secure the border and we have the ability to do that and control the flow, it's actually going to increase trade. And not only that, it stops this taxpayer hemorrhaging that we have in the United States right now. What is the last estimate, John? Between 43 and 300 billion per year in taxpayer costs with illegal immigration. And here's the other flip side to that. If we don't streamline immigration, we're losing, in the 5th District alone, we have thousands of jobs that have gone unfilled on the H-2A and H-2B side because we don't have enough workers on the South side because we're losing population. So it's an amazing thing. Secure the border, streamline immigration, make sure E-Verify works. Get those three things in order, and we can go forward. But again, Congress makes a lot. It's like a jobs program for congressmen and congresswomen. They make a lot of years and a lot of money perpetuating the problem. They create an awful situation, then they propose awful solutions for a situation they created. That's why Congress isn't working, and we've got to get that back.
You're right. They create the crisis, and then they manage themselves off the crisis. You're so right, but now you're part of that august body. So how do you change it, Denver Riggleman?
Well, I feel like I'm screaming into a popcorn box sometimes, and I vote for one thing where people get mad when you fund the border, right? And President Trump signs it. Then I know there's a national emergency, so I vote for that. I was one of the only congressmen, and to try to talk about this in a common sense way. Let's fund the border. Let's look at how we fund it even more. And then all of a sudden, the Democrats have an absolute breakdown. And I'm one of 435. But there were over 90 of us elected into this new class. I'm really cross. I think you're going to have a lot of moderate Democrats start to come out of the woodwork because you're seeing that Pelosi can't lead. The new left is on a collision course with common sense. They're not going to win. So you have all this happening, and I do think you're going to see this shift, especially with the American people, that Republicans are going to take back the majority in 2020 because they're looking for common sense again, and I think Republicans need to get there.
There's not a lot of common sense, Denver, going on right now, especially the situation at the border. I mean, you've still got Democrats running for president. We were playing clips earlier. Every single one of them down there running around and saying there's no crisis. And you've got...
like Bobby O'Rourke?
Like Bobby O'Rourke
Bobby.
And Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, Robert Francis. Yeah, and Bernie. Yeah. So Bernie and Bobby, right? Bobby O'Rourke and Bernie Sanders. That's our... And the thing is that it's just it's them trying to win. I find it incredibly interesting that those that are most socialists are those that are unwilling to deal with facts are the ones who want to get paid by taxpayers the most. Don't you find that amazing, Jeff?
It is really amazing.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy what's going on out there.
All right, let's get to Obamacare. McAuliffe asked this question on the phone to me, and I really didn't have an answer for him. Right? He asked me. He said, "You're for Trump, right? You might be his chairman again in Virginia. We don't know. I might not." He said, "So, do you think it's a good politically right now as we go to 2020 to have your Justice Department throw out Obamacare? We got 20 million people on exchanges. True. We've got people that." Need the waiver on pre-existing conditions. True. We have people that are kids that are under 25 or 26, at home on their parents' insurance. True. Why would you throw all that out going into 2020? He's like, John, how does that make any sense? Now, that's a pretty good question McAuliffe asked me. I didn't have an answer for that other than I think that's a bad idea. How are we going to fix this, and why did we do that?
I don't know. I think, for me, and the 5th District's a unique place when it comes to healthcare, right? We have, I don't know if you know this, John, we have 7 out of 17 of the federally funded community healthcare centers are in the 5th District. I didn't know if you knew that we have the most, because we have one of the most rural areas right down south and with some of the lowest GDP, so you have a lot of people who use community health centers. How about this, though? Again, if you look at it a little differently, what if Obamacare is thrown out and we come up with something better that actually has pre-existing conditions, right, that takes care of kids that are still going to college, right, that has some of the things that were good about the ACA, and we throw out the bad parts? And I think you see the screaming is going on, too, by the healthcare industries on the big side, because they've taken about 10 years to try to get into the ACA, right, this whole regulatory burden, which has cost them billions of dollars to try to do. But they're also getting a lot of money for Medicaid expansion. So they want this cool system to keep for them, too. So you have both sides pushing, right? And, it is about money, but it's also about care. So I think at some point we have to look at the bad parts. What if we just took the bad parts out of the ACA, right, just ripped them out? I don't care what we call it. We can call it Obamacare. We can call it Trump Care. We can call it, America Care, right? America Care First or something.
Denver, you there?
Need more HSAs.
Right.
Need more HSA sort of use, with the health savings accounts. I think we need to get rid of third parties, and I think we need groups or entities able to create their own healthcare exchanges or healthcare groups. We can do all of this and keep those protections. Why don't we call it America Care? It doesn't have to be called Obamacare or Trump Care. I'm not quite sure why we're just trying to rip Obamacare out or ACA right now. But we do need to take the bad parts out, and I think you're going to see a lot of discussions on that coming up over the next couple of months, for sure.
But, Congressman, in order to do that, you're going to have to work with the Democrats, right? There's going to have to be a bipartisan solution. They control Congress, all the chairmanships. So you're going to have to sit down, and you're going to have to work with Nancy Pelosi and her leadership. And is she really willing to do that? I mean, if you made them work with you, that would force their hand. Either they want to fix this or just turn it into a political football, right?
Yeah, and they might try to do that, but you still say and do the right things. They can turn into a political football. What I have my staff doing is going through all of the areas that we disagree with and agree with on the healthcare plan. It's just part of running a business that I used to do, right? I sort of know some of the areas that are really bad when it comes to getting healthcare for my employees also. So what I have my staff doing is going through both sides, right? What are the good and the bad? What do we want to keep? What will we want to throw out? Who are the stakeholders? Why are we getting so much pressure from certain insurance companies? And try to look through the cronyism that's going on from one side and the government stupidity on the other. And if we can try to get rid of, the government allowing other people to write their laws for them, and if we can try to see who are the actual people that have a vested interest in keeping a broken system and what are the right parts of that system, what we're going to do is we're going to do a plus minus on this, and then I'm going to go to war for the people of the 5th District based on what I think is best for healthcare. That's all I can do in the minority, work across the aisle the best I can, and actually have a matrix or a metric on what's best. I don't know how else to do it, John, but to look at it as a business problem and a human problem and try to solve it. I don't know how else to do it.
I just don't want you to get frustrated because I love your attitude. I love your energy. And, Congressman Denver Riggleman, I've been through this, right? I went through it with Dave. I went through it with Hurt. Guys come on my show every week. They get in. They're excited. They have all these ideas, and then they get just crushed by the bureaucracy, the deep state, the system, everything that goes on, the donor money, and then they leave or they just get frustrated. You're such a breath of fresh air. I just hope that doesn't happen to you.
John,
I really don't.
Thank you. I hope it doesn't either, but I would be lying to you to say that I already haven't been fairly frustrated in some of the things that I've seen already. And I'm trying really hard to look at this as service and as an occupation, to help the 5th, not as some kind of career. And I think if I can look at it specifically as service and look at that, I know it's going to be bad. I know I'm going to get my face bashed in. I know we have idiots on social media, right? We have, all these people who have no idea what's going on, or they're politically slanted, or they've never met me, or they have no interest in actually getting things done. you have all that going on simultaneously. You have, even within the Republican Party, you have the groups within the Republican Party, the groups within the Democratic Party, all of them have their base. But the great thing is that this is still the people's house. 435 people, I get to represent the 5th District the best way I can, based on what I campaigned on, try to keep my promises. And those promises are based on bipartisanship, as you said, John, right? I made promises that I'm going to fight the opioid crisis and the addiction crisis, which is now meth and crack, right? Health care has to be fixed. We're going to streamline immigration, not only secure the border, but help with H-2As and H-2Bs, which the farmers down south begged me to do, right? I'm going to help with infrastructure. I want to help with deregulation. All that stuff I promised I would do for the 5th. I just have to work across the aisle and figure it out. And if I can't, well, then guess what? I get elected out or I walk away, right? But I can't walk away. I made this commitment. I made this promise. I'm not going to walk away. I'll do the best I can. And, and if I get beat, I get beat, but I'm going to do the best I can.
I'm out of time. I want to thank Congressman Denver Riggleman for being with us. Thank you, Denver. Always appreciate your honest and refreshing